Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to have all of you here for a topic I think that is dear to all of our hearts. I think we spend roughly a third of our lives sleeping without being aware of what it is that we are doing. We don't even think of it as part of our normal lives, but it is. And it is essential to our normal lives. And like so many other wonderful things, it's only when we don't have it that we start to miss it. So to elucidate some of the mysteries of sleep and to help us get more of this wonderful thing, which is so essential to our lives, we've got this wonderful, wonderful panel lined up. We have, the first to go will be Dr. Uma Maheshwari from St. John's Medical College. She is a pulmonologist, but she also has a clinic on sleep disorders. And she will first address that most essential of all questions, that is, why do we sleep? Why do human beings sleep? Why do most animals sleep? Clearly, this is something really essential to our lives, and she will help us to understand that. And she will be followed by Deepa Kannan, who has written this book on how to sleep better. She's a practitioner of functional medicine. She's got these steps to help us sleep better, which she will explain. And once both of them speak, we will have a panel discussion. We will have a discussion among ourselves for about 20 minutes, and then we will throw it open to you for all your questions. And I'm sure you will all leave the session eager to go home for a good night's sleep. So with that, Dr. Uma, can I invite you?
Yeah. Good evening, and thanks to the BIC for this opportunity. I love to talk about sleep. I hope all of you have had a good night's sleep last night. No? I hope I don't put you to sleep in my talk. Yeah. But they close at 8. You have to continue sleeping here if that happens. So what I'll do over the next 15 to 20 minutes is to talk about why we sleep. When all of us sleep, is it the same sleep? Is it different? And what makes it different between people? And why have we woken up to the need of sleep? So that will be the main outline of my talk. What are the individual nuances in sleep? What drives the sleep-wake cycle? And why this waking up to the importance of sleep? Isn't it something as natural as eating and brushing your teeth and doing other stuff? Why are we becoming conscious about something which used to be a subconscious process? So this is what I would be discussing. So coming to why do we sleep? What function does sleep subserve? Any takers to tell me why we sleep?
Rejuvenate.
Yeah, to rest and rejuvenate, that's what most of us know. Can we think of any other function? To dream, yes. Good ones, yes. Probably not bad ones, yes.
Immunity.
To build up immunity. Anything else?
Get rid of toxins.
Yeah. So just like all our machines need to be shut down for a while, all your mobiles were asked to be switched off for some time. We also need to switch off and recover, rest and rejuvenate. You've got most of it right. There is also an evolutionary perspective to sleep. I would recommend those who are interested in reading to read Matt Walker's book on how we sleep, in addition to Deepa's book. He says that probably the world was created sleeping and then we slowly woke up. So he's a neurobiologist who works in one of the universities in California. He talks about how bacteria started their life by sleeping and then slowly woke up and looked around and then the world was there. So our default state was sleeping, but yet we crave sleep now. So there is an evolutionary perspective. From bacteria to Homo sapiens or Homo deus, all of us sleep. Repair and restoration, most of you told me this. We also do this to conserve energy. If I were a wild animal in a forest and a lion is hunting for me, moving around is not exactly the thing I would like to do. So I would like to sleep so that I can survive. And I can conserve energy for the day which comes. And also, sleep helps in learning and memory consolidation. There is an anecdote which you will find in many media on the internet as well as in books, which says there was a famous pianist who used to practice her notes before going to sleep, wouldn't get them quite right, but when she woke up in the next morning, lo, behold, it was good. So what's happening? The body is sleeping, but the brain is busy repairing itself, creating new synaptic connections. The so-called neuroplasticity is happening when we are sleeping. And of course, like many of you pointed out, sleep also gives you an immunity boost. Those who have stayed awake for exams would know those mysterious illnesses, aches and pains, and infections which crop up before an exam. Apart from nutrition, it's also sleep which contributes to this. So this was the evolutionary perspective I was talking about. Those that are eaten up sleep at night. The lion hunts at night, but the mighty lion and the lowly pig or the opossum also need their sleep. I spoke about neuroplasticity. A lot of neuronal connections are formed, and we know of things called spindles in the sleep realm, which originate in the thalamus, which is again the seat of lot of memory consolidation in the hippocampus. We see a lot of waveforms in sleep which do indicate that the brain is indeed active. We are not running up and running, but it is, like you said, clearing of bad memories, keeping the good ones. And if you want to take it for example, take it like your own computer, it is moving it to a secure storage to be retrieved when it's required. So sleep subserves all these functions. Now, what is normal sleep? Like I said, all of us sleep, but do we sleep the same way? Do we have the same architecture? Are there nuances? Like Thomas said, we spend a third of our lives sleeping, but that seems to be the most unmet need these days. Sleep deprivation kills faster than food deprivation. You have to starve 2 weeks to die, but only 10 days of absolute sleep deprivation can cause death. That's how important it is. How much sleep do we require? I'm sure many in the audience will be wondering. I'm seeing a smattering of all age groups here, from probably not the teens who seem to be sleeping forever at the wrong times, the elderly who cannot fall asleep, small kids who keep sleep most of the time, and people like us with a midlife crisis go to sleep. They are in bed for the right time, but still don't feel quite refreshed in the morning. So how much sleep do we require? It is variable among species. In my subsequent slide, I'll show you an infographic about animal sleep, just to keep you awake in between the session. In human beings, it varies from person to person. It varies across the lifespan. So don't think you can sleep like a child from birth till you're ready to go. It depends on intrinsic sleep need. All of us will remember those sleepless nights when we were young parents and we had to tend to children. Sleep just didn't seem to come that time. Or we have a project deadline coming up, we can't stay awake for those extra hours. It also depends on sleep opportunity. This reminds me of my residency days where we used to go for 48 to 72 hours at a stretch without sleep and still be able to function. So it is like there are phases in life where sleep opportunities are less, but we have to wake up to the fact that a little bit of it or an agreeable amount of sleep is necessary to keep us going. Sleep need also varies based on your chronotype. Most of us must have identified ourselves as owls or larks, ones who can function best in the evening. I'm an owl. But it is not good to be an extreme owl. I can't always say, while the world is sleeping, I'm awake and doing good, because I'm disobeying the laws of nature. The world turns dark for a reason. Melatonin secretion, which promotes sleep, surges for a reason. So we try to fit into social mores. And when you look at surveys conducted among different age groups of people, roughly a third of us are owls, a third are larks, and most of us do fall within what is socially acceptable. And regarding the duration of sleep, most humans sleep between 5 to 11 hours with an average of 7 to 8 hours. So this is the interesting infographic on animal sleep, where you can look at this brown bat which sleeps for nearly 20 hours, sleeps upside down and sometimes within caves. the dog which sleeps very less. And it has been described that among birds flying in a formation, the migratory birds, they can sleep with one hemisphere. So when they are flying in, let's say, a spindle-shaped formation, the birds on the center tend to fall asleep. The ones on the right or the left have their respective hemispheres open so that one eye is open, the other half is sleeping. This has been demonstrated in research studies, so everyone needs to sleep. Now coming to sleep cycles of the rich and famous, most of us seem to think that lesser is better, and if you look at this across realms of finance and accounting, technology, engineering, media, marketing or politics, you have those people who sleep less and those who sleep more. Finding the sweet spot is difficult, but all of us need sleep. What most experts recommend is to take a holiday only to sleep. Discover your rhythm, discover the time you need. It may be 4 hours, it may be 6 hours, for some people it may be 8 hours, and try to fit that into a schedule, as long as it is socially acceptable. Like I said, across the lifespan, sleep requirement tends to decrease from the 16 hours eternally sleeping neonate to those who are older, who seem to sleep early, wake up early before everyone else does, and they are generally troublesome at home, and all the youngsters at home are saying, why is my grandmother or grandfather or in-law awake at 3 a.m. in the morning, and what are they doing? So they do have a problem, so the intrinsic sleep need comes down. So that, again, what we do nowadays is that when we wake up with, let's say at 3 a.m. in the night, we reach for the gadget. So any small chance of sleep we might have is killed. So this sleep need has to be understood before we start harping about those magical 8 hours. There are also inter-individual differences in the sleep-wake cycle. As you can see here, you have a circadian pendulum and a homeostatic pendulum. The circadian pendulum is governed by the 24 hours light-dark cycle. The homeostatic pendulum drives your intrinsic sleep need. I can't go on and on and on working. Whether it's day or night, if I've done it for a long time, I need a break. And between these pendulums, you have people who are owls and larks, which I described, and those who are short sleepers and long sleepers. So each one of us has, in that sense, a unique sleep fingerprint, which we have to identify and adjust to. So those who are interested can take the morningness, eveningness questionnaire to identify the chronotype. It's not that you cannot use the chronotype to flex that I'll go to sleep late at night or wake up very early in the morning and disturb everyone, but you can fix your optimal working hours based on your chronotype. Chronotype varies across age and based on occupation. Most doctors would become all-weather types. We can wake up and sleep anywhere, anytime, simply because of demands of duty, but it's not really a good thing to do. And switch to a biologically and socially acceptable phenotype is possible if we do the right things, which probably Deepa will be talking about in her talk. And finally, what drives the sleep-wake cycle? Why do we feel sleepy at all? So we have 3 rhythms running. I'll simplify it for you. We have something called a homeostatic drive. The drive to sleep is influenced by the duration of wakefulness. The longer I'm awake, the more activity I'm doing, the more sleepy I will feel. It is also driven by the circadian rhythm, that is a light-dark cycle, which also affects not only sleep, but also mood and cognition, and there is a diurnal variation in body temperature. It's also driven by the ultradian rhythm, which is shorter than the 24-hour sleep-wake cycle, which includes the cellular processes, our respiration, circulation, sleep stages, and feeding patterns. Again, this becomes important because of a new emerging field called chrononutrition, where what you eat and when you eat will influence your sleep. Again, I think Deepa will talk about it. So what are circadian rhythms? So when you have light, melatonin secretion from a gland just behind the center of your nose called the pineal gland is suppressed and you feel awake. Now they have dimmed the lights in the auditorium. I'm sure the people at the back will have a surge of melatonin secretion. I hope to keep shouting and keep you awake. But once there is no light, melatonin secretion. This is a very simplistic way of putting it, but there are other drivers as well. What do we do to suppress this? We keep lights on, we keep our gadgets on, we keep the TV on, and that suppresses melatonin secretion, and that's why we are not able to sleep like logs, like people used to do before. So like I said, it's not only the circadian system, it's also the environment which drives your 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. And these environmental triggers have a fancy German term called Zeitgebers. I hope I have pronounced it okay. Activity, the duration of sleep-wake, and the light-dark work are all external cues to tell you to fall asleep. And thanks to our 24/7 lifestyle, we have abolished most of these cues. Our social norms dictate we should be out till late in the night, we should be checking mails, we should probably be binge watching on Netflix or whichever platform we use, or even read on your Kindle or your devices, which again emit blue light and disturb sleep. So we are removing the external cues, and that's why we have sleep issues. And when we look at sleep architecture, all of us have different durations, different sleep needs, and other things which signify our individual sleep state, but all of us do go through this rigmarole of cyclical sleep. It is not that somebody sleeps, remains in a homeostatic or a steady state and wakes up. We cycle through what are called these sleep stages. We cycle through sleep stages which move from wake to N1, N2, N3, and then REM sleep, and then it goes on. And as you can see, as the night progresses, our duration of REM sleep, which is indicated for some reason, the pointer is working. So this is your REM sleep, which again, the importance of which is beyond the purview of this talk, but we do cycle is what you need to remember. It's not one steady state. We are moving through stages of sleep and moving through cycles of sleep, and that's why that consolidated 6 or 8 hours is required. If I keep interrupting sleep, I'll be starting the cycle again and again, and despite having the magical 8 hours, I wouldn't have slept well. And lastly, why are we waking up to the importance of sleep? I think I have a minute left. This was caveman in his happy cave, with the fire going on, the light falling in the right places and falling asleep. And lo, Edison came along, invented the light bulb, and this was the bane of modern civilization, where we could have light and let there be light everywhere, and there went our sleep. In addition to this, we have a 24/7 work cycle. We work across shifts, and this disrupts sleep. So, and also we have gadgets, like I said. So the smart age is smart, but it's a far cry from this stone age where things were much simpler and people could do things more naturally. So what causes disrupted sleep? So this is the summary: 24/7 light exposure, blue light exposure, activities and social pressures, shift work, the so-called FOMO. Those who are teenage kids will know about FOMO, fear of massively missing out. I call it FOMO. So people do want to be active on social media, be aware of things that are going on with them around the world, across time zones. So this also disrupts sleep. When it comes to nutrition, we like ready-to-eat foods. We eat on the go. We binge on caffeine and alcohol, and that disrupts sleep. And we have a fast and furious lifestyle, academic and work pressures, lack of mindfulness. With all this, tell me who thinks sleep is necessary. It has been relegated to second status, and that is coming back to bite us, which we probably will take up in the discussion. So what damage control measures can we achieve? A good sleep hygiene, stress reduction, chrononutrition, which will be discussed, and the move from curing sleep disorders. I would love it if my sleep clinic is empty, if I could prevent sleep disorders, relearning the art of spontaneous sleeping, and the yoga or union of ancient Eastern practices with medical knowledge. So I leave you with this last slide on the CDC guidelines for a tip for better sleep. Those who still surreptitiously have their mobiles on can scan the QR code. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you all for being here today, and thank you to BIC. Thank you, Uma, for an excellent presentation, which means I can cut short many things on my presentation, which you covered beautifully. And just to give a little background before I go into my slide as to, first of all, what am I saying that's different to what Uma said, and what is the book, how did the book come about, is that I had my feet in these two worlds, one called functional medicine, one called Ayurveda. So just to give a little overview of both, functional medicine is a systems-based approach where it's believed that all systems are interconnected. So rather than going to a gastroenterologist for digestive issues or psychologist for depression, that you look inside and go backwards to understand the root causes of whatever symptom or condition you might be having, including sleep challenges. Now, the thing about functional medicine is that every practitioner spoke about how we need 3 core principles. For a stool to stand, we need 3 legs. And for functional medicine, for any protocol to be effective, whatever you give a person in terms of nutrients or protocols, the person has to be sleeping, they need to be having smooth elimination, and they need to have stable blood sugar. And this goes beyond somebody being a diabetic, that we all need to have blood sugar balance. Now, Ayurveda, of course, is a system that's thousands of years old, and we will go a little bit into the overview of Ayurveda, but Ayurveda also believes in the concept of the 3-legged stool, and that the 3 core basics for all health are ahar, which is food, nidra, which is sleep, and brahmacharya, which is how you conduct yourself in terms of utilizing the sexual energy. Now, when I started to observe, because I was in these peer groups of both functional medicine and Ayurveda, I heard the colleagues in functional medicine talking about how protocols from ancient wisdom might not be effective, or you couldn't give somebody a protocol from ancient wisdom because not all of it is research backed. Fair point. Then I started to notice the colleagues in Ayurveda talking about how you're complicating health and nobody should have a single supplement. If somebody comes to you and they've got high cholesterol, just ignore the labs. And I just felt these worlds were pulling each other apart, and I wanted to create the synergy. So I wanted to bring science and ancient wisdom together. That's how this book happened, because I just felt there was excellent information in both these worlds. So how can we give protocols from ancient wisdom which brings the power back into our hands, where we could be in our own homes, we don't need to go somewhere or outsource protocols, and we can also monitor the results of whatever we use through functional medicine, through the science of looking at our blood markers. So I think it's important for these worlds to be together. And recently there was somebody who wrote an article about my book, and it felt as if the person who was reviewing the book was pulling these two worlds apart. And I said to my husband that, you know, it seems as if only the person outside is pulling the worlds apart. But for example, I'd met Uma just a few weeks ago when we were organizing this event, and I just felt there's so much synergy between us, and we were both open. We both knew that we could take inputs from each other, and ultimately we all want to make a difference to whoever comes to us, and that's how the book happened. So there's a lot of information here, but I just want to say that if you run through this slide, for example, one thing to note is that sleep is bidirectional with several symptoms, which I've explored in great detail in the book. For example, if you have anxiety, and anxiety is something which is so prevalent today, practically everybody is saying that I'm on anti-anxiety medication. Now, if somebody is anxious, it sets off a physiological cascade of symptoms, for example, elevated heart rate, rate, palpitations, inability to fall asleep. And then if somebody doesn't fall asleep, they're perpetually not sleeping. Through the day, it's making them more anxious. At night, it's making them more anxious. So in this manner, whatever symptom you have, research is showing us that those who don't sleep have a greater predisposition to develop metabolic disorders such as insulin resistance or diabetes. And this is not to scare anybody, but just to tell you the power sleep holds, and if we work on sleep, how everything comes back to balance. And I'm really pleasantly surprised today to see that sleep physicians are talking about how addressing sleep can make a big difference in somebody who's unable to bring their blood sugar into control or regulate taking care of their heart disease. So it's beautiful to see this interaction being spoken about much more. One unique difference, and again, just to highlight before we go into this, is Dr. Uma spoke about certain sleep challenges, and I know she didn't cover sleep disorders because we had spoken about this outside, and she said, I didn't really want to scare anybody with disorders, but the main point is that if we were to look at sleep, it's like a continuum. So there's one side we will have people saying, I absolutely have no challenges with sleep. If I lie down, I'm sleeping, and then it's 8 to 9 hours later. On the other end of the spectrum, you might have somebody who has a diagnosed sleep disorder, such as sleep apnea or any other sleep disorder. And then we've got this wide gap in the middle where most of us are, where we don't have a diagnosed sleep disorder. However, we are not having optimal sleep. Maybe we struggle to fall asleep. Maybe we have frequent wake-ups. Or maybe we do sleep, but we don't feel refreshed. So my idea was to come into this zone in the middle and do a lot of preventive care, improve the quality of sleep. And even if you're somebody with a diagnosed sleep disorders, most of the protocols in the book can be adjunct or complementary alongside you working with a sleep physician. Now, one thing you'll see there is that sleep is really unique based upon the body constitution, and this goes back to Ayurveda, which we'll come to in the next slide, so I'll leave that for now. And it's also based upon the present state of imbalance. So Ayurveda has these two concepts called Prakriti and Vikriti. Prakriti is a combination of the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, which all of us have. And I'll go into the dosha a little later, but at the time of our birth, we each have a particular permutation and combination of these three doshas, which decide how will our body structure be, what will be our emotional tendencies, what will be the predisposition towards certain diseases. And this is known as Prakriti, and this cannot change. However, there's something called Vikriti, that at every moment in time, each of those doshas can be behaving a different way. So we could be presently having imbalances in any direction. So one of the things I wanted to do in the book was to provide you with a way to understand what is the present state of imbalance and how do you restore the balance at any point in time. The other aspect you'll see here is that sleep is unique based upon the season and location. Today, research is showing, for example, that there can be sleep challenges in the winter when the sun goes down, and this has a lot to do with how we are programmed with circadian rhythm. And thousands of years ago, Ayurveda spoke that the cold season, the winter season, is a Vata season, and Vata has the quality of cold and dry. And in Ayurveda, no matter what the body constitution, anybody can have Vata aggravation, and this can be further exacerbated in the winter. So therefore, back then Ayurveda spoke that the winter is a time where you'll have a predisposition towards sleep disruption, and it's of course wonderful. Yes?
Could you please slow down a little bit? We're finding it difficult.
Sure. Actually, you're the very first person who's asked me to slow down. Most often people are telling me you're talking too slowly. So it's, you gave me a...
little bit because we're finding it difficult
Absolutely. I think I'm just trying to pack in Thomas into the time. Okay, so let's actually go into the next slide. Now, if you can see this, what is the 10 indriyas? So the indriyas is something which is the 10 senses. I'll give you a little humorous story that I was interviewed by somebody in the US a few weeks ago, and she had read my book, and then she said to me that, you know, it's so beautiful that you invented these 10 senses. And I said, no, I didn't invent them. This is a concept that has existed for thousands of years ago in Eastern ancient texts. Be it Ayurveda and yoga, both these texts talk about the indriyas. Now, the indriyas are our senses. We're well aware of the jnana indriyas, which are sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. But perhaps we're not quite as familiar with karma indriyas, which are the senses of action. Now, the sense organs of action are the rectum, genitals, legs, hands, and mouth. And basically, they perform the sense of detoxification, urination, and hormones, locomotion, or the legs allow us to move from place to place. The hands allow us to grasp and hold things, and the mouth allow us to have speech. Now, I use the 10 indriyas as a framework. So the book is absolutely not pure Ayurveda. It's an exact intersection of functional medicine and Ayurveda. So in each of these 10 senses, I've gone into understanding sleep disruption and root causes of sleep disruption through these 10 indriyas and particular systems. So we can do a quick overview of the 10 senses, and just don't be overwhelmed, because really when we go to the next slide, you'll see that what I've really tried to do in the book is to bring the power back into your hands, that every chapter on each of these concepts have therapies, protocols that you can do from the comfort of your own home. So for me, it was very important that, be it Ayurveda, I didn't always want to go away to a center and be away from home or need to take medication. Be it science, I didn't want to put 35 supplements on myself, which is a common practice in a lot of functional medicine practices. So for me, it was, how do you simplify health? How do you simplify, and what are the best protocols which give you the bang for your buck, so to speak? So while I have looked at circadian rhythm, I don't want to talk too much about circadian rhythm, since Uma already spoke about that, of how the light and dark cycles are regulate cortisol and melatonin. But I do want to talk about two principles. The first is, recently there's been a lot of interest, and there's actually a book by Michael Bruce, who's known as the sleep doctor, where he's gone into the sleep chronotypes, night owl, morning lark, and he actually tried to provide evidence that the night owls, we've monitored their melatonin and cortisol patterns, and they have a delayed rhythm. However, I have a sleep podcast where I interviewed 200 people, and I've asked practically everybody this question, that what is your thought on the night owl? And the majority is that this concept is created by us because of a lot of the practices that we are putting on ourselves. So I just wanted to say that if there was a study done recently where they took a group of people out camping and who all thought they were night owls, and there was no artificial light there, and their whole rhythm reset itself in sync with the light and dark of nature. So that does provide clear evidence that we're not meant to be the night owl. It's sort of self-inflicted in a way, but maybe we've not realized that. And the main thing I want to talk about, which I did a little differently in the book, because a lot of practitioners talk about the light, I spoke about how the health of the eyes plays a role in circadian rhythm, that there's evidence that those with macular degeneration, which of course is an extreme way of eye degeneration, that their ability to regulate circadian rhythm is compromised because of the change in the pupil side. So basically what this tells us is that caring for our eyes and having healthy eyes plays a key role in how we react to light and dark around us. The years, I want to spend a little bit of time because this holds the key to sleep. Now, I spoke about the 3 doshas. Some of you might be familiar with Vata, Pitta, Kapha, but just to give an overview that it's believed that we've got these 5 elements in nature where we've got space, air, fire, water, and earth. And these elements come together in our body as doshas. So Vata is represented by space and air, Pitta represents fire and water, and Kapha represents earth and water. Now these 3 come into our body as Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and each of us have different combinations. However, because Vata has got this air and space, and it's got qualities where it's cold and dry. So it tells you if somebody is predominantly Vata, they'll be more light framed. They will have the tendency to feel anxious, spacey. They'll have a tendency towards dry skin, dry hair, sleeplessness, anything where there's no feeling of being grounded. So they don't have the elements of earth and water, so they don't feel grounded. So they'll have a tendency for elevated heart rate, inability to slow down. They'll always be talking. They'll never want to stop. So they'll tell you that I can't sit still. I need to keep doing something. Now, excess Vata, high Vata in Ayurveda is the #1 reason for sleep disruption. Now, you don't have to be a predominantly Vata constitution, or you don't even need to know what is your constitution. However, it will tell you that practically all of us have excess Vata today. How would we know if we have high Vata? Is if we're just unable to slow down. If we're not able to allow our mind to calm down when we go to bed, and it's simply chatter, chatter, chatter. So that what science today is calling dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system, where we have a tendency to be predominantly in a state of fight or flight, that is what is spoken about in Ayurveda as high Vata. And so Vata is a big reason for sleep disruption. Now the adrenal gland, if you put your hands on the back of your hip, you've got the kidneys there. On top of the kidneys is a little cap-like gland called the adrenal. And the adrenal gland, the cortex, the outer shell of the adrenal gland produces cortisol and something called aldosterone. Cortisol today is very much, we've realized that high cortisol typically should be released when we have a state of stress, and then we should be able to calm ourselves down. But in a life where we are bombarding ourselves with stress, constantly putting out cortisol, we're not able to slow down. The key point to note is cortisol has a ski slope rhythm, which means when you wake up in the morning, it needs to be really high. So you wake up feeling like you're energetic, and you don't need a cup of coffee to get you going. And then it should start slowing down by the evening, so that by the time you go to bed, it's at its lowest. Unfortunately, in today's world, most of us have different slopes and what is called adrenal dysfunction, where when we go to bed, even if we are exhausted, it's called wired and tired, where we're sitting there and we're just unable to slow down. Now, this dysfunctional adrenal rhythm and this dysfunctional cortisol pattern is exactly what Ayurveda spoke about as high Vata. And it's discovered that our sound, when we listen to loud, disturbing sound, you hear, I'm sure we all relate to maybe at night when we are going to fall asleep, someone at home comes and shouts at us and we just can't fall asleep. So sound has been proven to be the most sensitive to the adrenal gland. So the nose is very key to understand because there are two diagnoses. Okay, so there's two diagnoses by sleep physicians which will help us to understand the nose, and one is sleep apnea, which we are quite familiar with, but however that somebody who has a lot of kapha dosha. Now kapha is the quality of earth and water, so when there's a lot of kapha, someone will have a tendency for sinus infections and tendency for allergies, so they'll have diagnoses such as sleep apnea. In reality, that's not always true sleep apnea. A lot of times it's just high kapha and that can be brought down. Also, somebody with this high kapha, because they've got this sinus congestion, they'll slip into a pattern of default mouth breathing, and therefore mouth breathing has been known to make us more stressed because it increases the heart rate, it reduces nitric oxide, and therefore we'll have a tendency to not sleep well or calm down even if you're sleeping for a long time. The skin and touch, there are two things that I'll quickly say. One is oxytocin and cortisol. Now oxytocin you might have heard of as the love hormone or something that's released when we hug someone or between mother and baby. Oxytocin and cortisol have an inverse relationship, that when somebody has high cortisol, if they do certain practices that release oxytocin, such as just hugging somebody or having a massage, that the increased oxytocin can drop cortisol and calm them down. The second thing to realize is something called histamine. Now, you'll all know if you get bitten by a wasp, how it swells up. So that's a compound called histamine, which is released by our white blood cell called mast cells. But after we are bitten, that histamine, which is released to protect us, should be evacuated out of the body. However, for some people, when they don't have an enzyme called DAO, they're not able to shunt out the histamine, and we've got histamine receptors in our brain. So when someone has high histamine, what it does is that wherever serotonin has to sit, the histamine goes and sits, so they can't fall asleep. Only thing you have to remember in this is that if someone has a lot of skin conditions, rashes, psoriasis, eczema, it's a barometer. So it gives you a guideline that this person can have histamine elevation, and that can be the reason for their sleep disruption. And since I'm so short on time, I'm going to just run through it. So the tongue, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the vagus nerve. Now, when we are in utero, inside the womb, we've got this clump of tissue, and this tissue breaks into two. One goes into the brain, the other becomes the enteric nervous system in our gut, and the two are connected via this nerve called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is key in regulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which means that using practices that support the vagus nerve can help us to shift into a calm state. One thing I'd ask you to notice from today is if the length of the exhalation is longer than the length of your inhalation. Vagal tone is the difference between exhale and inhale. If somebody has an exhale that's almost double the inhale, it means they have a high vagal tone, so they're able to relax very easily under pressure. Most of us today, when we are watching ourselves breathe, we have a short, we've got an inhale and exhale which is almost equal, and my grouse with all the watches today which says breathing app on it is that the inhale exhale will be the same. So it's not really helping somebody to improve their vagal tone. The sense of detoxification, I'll just say that the liver plays a very key role in sleep. A lot of people have fatty liver today. All liver disruption can have an impact on sleep. It's found that people with liver challenges take longer to fall asleep. They have poorer deep sleep. and there can be genetic variations which induce challenges with liver function and disrupt sleep. The only thing I will talk about there is the vitamin D. So you know that we're all prescribed this 60,000 sachet. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, and high dose of vitamin D has been known to disrupt liver function. So if somebody already has compromised liver function, they take this large vitamin D dose, it can disrupt sleep severely. However, taking a low dose of vitamin D instructs the gut microbiome to produce B vitamins, and when the gut microbiome produces B vitamins, they then produce something called acetylcholine, which tells our parasympathetic nervous system to calm down. The hormones and urinary system very quickly, that we all know if we have disruption and we are waking up frequently to urinate, we can't sleep, be it prostate issues in men or urinary incontinence in women. The only thing that can teach us why this happens and give us a code as to understanding what to do is in Ayurveda, both frequent urination and nighttime urination as well as sleep disruption all go back to imbalance in Vata, and I talk a lot about how you can balance Vata in the book. Legs and allow us to move from place to place. Two key principles there. One is something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, which it plays a key role in slow wave sleep. Now, the more sleep deprived we need more slow wave sleep, and the beauty is that exercise also releases brain-derived neurotropic factor, so therefore exercise can help us to have better sleep. And the second principle is that when we exercise, initially there's an elevation in core body temperature, but following that, the body starts calming down that temperature. So post-exercise, we have a cool drop. And we know from research today that low core body temperature allows us to fall asleep. And of course, the bidirectional aspect of pain and sleep, I'm sure anybody having pain issues like fibromyalgia or arthritis will know that sleeping can be a real problem, finding the right position can be a real problem. Again, the answer comes from Ayurveda that both pain is caused by high Vata, sleep disruption is caused by high Vata. And of course, thyroid, the thyroid gland, whether it's overactive thyroid means that we have palpitations, we can't slow down. However, sluggish thyroid can also disrupt sleep in several ways. One of the ways is that elevated TSH is a reason for restless leg syndrome. I'm sure Uma has a lot of patients who come to her for sleep disruption with restless leg syndrome, and hypothyroidism is one of the reasons for restless leg syndrome. The other is that low thyroid also impacts, drops estrogen, progesterone in women, and low progesterone doesn't allow us to fall asleep because progesterone gives the code to our brain to release something called GABA, which allows us to calm down. And of course, thyroid plays a key role in how we regulate temperature. So since I'm so short on time, I'm just going to run through few ways for all these senses. Eyes is that, as I said, that the camping research has clearly shown us evidence that we are meant to be in sync with nature, and Ayurveda is the original circadian medicine. So really most challenges, and I've had endocrinologists who've said that we've done research and found just moving the sleep 1 hour backward has a positive impact on insulin resistance, diabetes. So we know that being in sync with nature and sleeping with the light and dark cycles is key to all health and especially sleep. The ears are, as I said, Vata, dosha. Sound is extremely, we are very sensitive to sound. It can disrupt adrenal function. So we really want to calm down the nervous system. And I'll just share one story where I've had a client tell me that I've been doing all your meditations and nothing is working. Now, if we wait for an SOS situation when we get really bad news and then sit to do pranayama, it's not going to do a thing. What we need to do is find one simple practice and be really consistent with it every single day, even on the days when all the news we get is really good. The nose is, as I said, mouth breathing. If recently I had a client where we did so much work and her blood pressure was just not coming down, and her pattern was because she had buck teeth, she was always breathing through her mouth. Now, you might see on Instagram a lot of practitioners posting this mouth taping, but I think that's irresponsible information. Those kind of practices really shouldn't be done unless it's by a guided practitioner. However, we can just observe ourselves to see that do we have a pattern of mouth breathing? Maybe we ask somebody who's sleeping next to us, am I sleeping with my mouth open? Because these play a very critical role in not just sleep, our ability to calm down, but all of health. The skin and touch, so I spoke about how oxytocin can help to lower cortisol. I will tell you that the most powerful practice till today, which I continue to use in helping me to stay calm, is the practice of Abhyanga. So we know olden days, our grandmother and great-grandmothers would be at home and tell us how to use oil and just massage ourselves. It's even better if you apply the oil and lie on the ground, because vata is air. When we feel the ground under our body in a large surface area and give time, you don't need to go to Ayurvedic center for a fancy massage. It's just 5 minutes at home and lie down. It's one of the most powerful anti-anxiety tools that you can use. The tongue, since we're short on time, I'm not able to go into how to balance the plate. However, I'll just quickly say that we're living in a world where green smoothies are very popular, raw foods are very popular, and this is not how food was done in Ayurveda. So there is a concept of 6 tastes. So we've got Madhura, which comes from whole grains, sweet vegetables like carrots, sweet potatoes. We've got salt. We've got sour with lime, which were really meant to have only a tiny pinch. Then we've got pungent like spices, bitter from the leafy greens, and astringent things that soak up the water. Typically, it is said that every meal should have all these tastes and it shouldn't be high in one taste. An example of this is that most health practitioners today are telling everybody to eat low glycemic meals, which means everybody should not eat sweet potatoes, carrots, grains are inflammatory, and this is just not okay, because not all of us have insulin resistance or pre-diabetes. We need all these tastes for our body to be in balance, and that's a huge science in itself. And of course, we can care for the liver. The simplest way we care for the liver every single day is to include some cooked leafy greens in our plate, and balancing these 6 days will also help balance hormones. Personalizing exercise is really important. So when somebody is vata aggravated, they'll tell you that I only enjoy exercise like sprints and running and HIIT workouts, and they don't need that. So if somebody has sleep disruption, they need to be slowing down the system. So swimming, yoga, walking. So you really want to think about, if you're not sleeping, are you doing too much with your exercise? And not everybody needs that kind of exercise. And finally, calming down the root of pain, which itself is a big science, and there's a lot of this in the book, so I'll leave you to that. And that the thyroid plays a key role in all health. However, I'll just leave you with one last thing to understand, is that our hormones are like almost a building. So we've got blood sugar balance as the base. If we've got stable blood sugar, adrenal cortisol rhythm will be stable. If we've got stable adrenal, we'll have stable thyroid hormones, and if the thyroid is balanced, we'll have optimal sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. So instead of complicating all of that, we just have to ensure that whenever we're eating to balance our blood sugar, and we can do that by just looking at our plate every single time and asking where's the fat, where's the protein, where's the fiber. If it's got all these three, it's very likely you'll have stable blood sugar. So I think I'll leave you with that for now and let you read the book.
Thank you, Deepa. I'd now like to invite Thomas Abraham and Dr. Uma onto the stage to begin the discussion.
So thank you both very much for those two wonderful presentations. And so what we're going to do now is we will have a brief discussion, picking up on some of the issues that both of you had raised, and then we will throw it open to the audience for questions. One of the things that struck me from both of your presentations is the fact that socially now, so there's this huge gap, I think you used the term, between society and biology. So in a sense, it seems to me that society, our social lives, is conspiring to prevent us from getting the kind of sleep that we need, right? Whether it is a gadget addiction, whether it is the kind of lifestyles, the long hours that we lead. And so this seems to be as much of a social problem as a biological problem. So how would you help people to address this? Maybe I'll start with you first. Go ahead.
Yeah, many of the things which society has imposed upon us are, in a sense, inevitable. Our work schedules, the commitments which we have. But within that, we can bring a sense of balance by at least being aware of our basic needs. That's what we try to do. For instance, when I see patients in the clinic who come with sleep hygiene issues, I try to tell them that the process of sleep should be subconscious. It should come naturally. It should not be an enforced thing where, just like in Cinderella, the clock strikes something and I go to sleep. It should be a process of falling asleep, a process of winding down. And amongst many age groups, it's difficult to reinforce these, especially among the working age, the students. There is a lot of academic and work pressure that they cannot adhere to these mores. But within this framework, whatever can be achieved is something which can be reinforced to reconstitute what is natural and what should be happening subconsciously.
I think, Thomas, one of the things I will say, we spoke so much about Vata, and Vata, the eyes are said to be ruled by Pitta. However, the movement of the eyes, it is said, is Vata, and moving our eyes is a way that we imbalance the nervous system. Now, if you look at somebody who's really Vata aggravated and watch how they scroll their phone, it will be super fast, rapid finger moving. Whether they're changing channels, you'll see them, you feel so sick looking at the way it's changing channels. So the eyes are a doorway to the nervous system, and I think what Uma said about personalizing is very important, because each of us have different schedules, and I start my work at 4 in the morning. So therefore, I have a very hard stop of 5 p.m. where I switch off my computer, my phone, nobody can access me till the next day. So I think based upon our work, and we are definitely working a whole lot more on the screen, so it's inevitable that this is a part of our life today, but within that we need to set those boundaries. For sure that we all have addiction. For sure, if the phone is next to me on the bed and I wake up at 2 a.m., I'm tempted to switch it on and check Instagram. So therefore, I just accept that I don't have control and I leave my phone up in my office and I'm not going to walk all the way up to do it. So therefore, certain practices we just have to bring into our life and look at the schedule as per each person, and we have to just set these in place. As you know that more and more de-addiction centers are coming up for phone usage for adults, and when we don't have control, how can we expect our kids to have control?
It's really interesting. In your opinion, I want to ask both of you, clearly I have my own opinion. I think gadgets probably are the biggest reason for any kind of sleep disruption and the kind of lives that we lead. But if I were to ask you, Uma, what do you think is the number one reason for sleep disruption? And suppose you had the power, in a sense, right, to, pass legislation, make sure people, sleep better. What was the one thing that you would tell people? Or what was the one thing that you would make people do?
Probably a blackout after when dusk sets in. That will be a very draconian or extreme measure. But that is something like how Deepa said, a hard stop. We have to stop and start winding down. What we used to do naturally has now become unnatural because we have gone so much beyond achievement and getting things done on time to the extent that we are harming our own health. So if I were to pass a legislation, probably lights should be off now.
I probably have a master Wi-Fi. I would probably have a master switch to switch off the whole world's Wi-Fi by 5 p.m.
So this is really interesting because I think all of us feel that sleep is an issue, but we also seem trapped in the kind of lives that we lead. It's a little like, 20, 30 years ago about, smoking and cancer. And you find that nobody wanted to stop. You had the tobacco industry, which was saying that, cigarettes are good for you. Here we have mass entertainment. We've got, streaming shows. We've got YouTube. All of this, where people are saying this is good for you. Do it, including food habits as well. Snacking, you've both spoken about the kind of food that we're eating. So in a sense, and there seems to be a conspiracy against sleep from our modern lives. I don't know what all of you think, and I think you both said what it is that you would do if you would legislate against this. But I think the suggestion I would like to put to both, we need to talk about this more. It's not a normal thing. This is an abnormal thing, and for you to tell patients, perhaps I'm sure you already do, that our lifestyle really is at the root of some of these disorders. So perhaps a 10-step, so this is my problem. When I start talking, I don't stop. Uma, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'm glad he brought up tobacco, smoking, and cancer. In fact, among shift workers, it has been shown that disrupted circadian rhythm is associated with increased incidence of cancers. So we all know about telomeres and aging and DNA adduct formation and the need to clear toxic wastes from the body. That really never happens if sleep cycle or circadian rhythm is disrupted. So, and the other thing also is that when I am advising patients about sleep hygiene, I don't sound very convincing because I'm not able to follow it myself. That's the kind of pressure that 24/7 society has imposed on us. And also we are swimming against the tide. It's a lone voice against all the social media, the streaming platforms, the floodlit stadia and other places, the day-night matches which happen. So it's really not possible for me to say, go to sleep when an IPL match is going on.
And on another note, Thomas, is that, Uma said that, but you also hear people in yoga and talking about how when you practice yoga, you just need 4 hours of sleep. So you've got that side of it as well. And I'm always telling people who say, but I've heard that I do yoga and I've heard that you just need 4 hours of sleep. That only applies if you're living in the Himalayas, you don't have a work day and you're meditating for a large part. And both of us have done that when we've been in ashram. So we can surely say that it's a different world when we are doing pranayama and meditation for 10 hours of the day and you don't need that much sleep. But that's not the case when we are mothers, working, spouses, and we are navigating so many things in life. And even ancient wisdom did not say that people in family life need so little sleep.
I think it's something for us all to think about. When I was reading your book and even from your presentation, and you have this wonderful system of really relaxing techniques to help us to sleep better, starting with, massages, the kind of food we eat, sort of the kind of light that enters our eyes after a certain, period of day to help us to get to sleep. But it also occurs to me once more that clearly our modern life does not allow this, but people like us in this audience can conceivably think of doing these things because we have time, we've got leisure, we can relax, we can have massages. But most people, and here I'm thinking of all, us, delivery, Swiggy, Zomato, when we Zoom past us, all these people who work night shifts, people who have very little say in what they eat whatever they can get, they eat whenever they can get. So this seems to be a huge issue. And so I want to start by asking you, are you getting, what kind of disease is this causing? Our sort of 24-hour, and especially among poorer people who don't have access, who don't have the luxury of doing the kind of things that we can do.
Yeah, again, among the patient population that we see, we do see a lot of people who are inflicted by this kind of shift work related issues. There's nothing they can do about it. These are people who come from small towns, migrate to places like Bangalore in search of that big dream job. I've met cab drivers who literally live in the cab. They sleep whenever they can, they stop over, go to sleep, pick up the next customer and so on. And I've really tried talking to them to ask how they could improve their quality of life. There's not much that can be done. So there has to be policy making, there has to be awareness at the higher level that certain things are not done. A Swiggy coming in time may be a good thing for me and I may rate it a 5, but I don't know what's happening to the poor Swiggy guy when I'm ordering in at 10 o'clock in the night. I'm disrupting my chrononutrition and his circadian rhythm. So there has to be policy level changes and awareness on sleep, which sadly doesn't seem to be happening at the government level. In fact, I can publicly tell you that even among the government's agenda and the key agencies in the government, sleep hardly finds a place. It's relegated to probably one of the last pages of a research proposal where that's a key area. It's not receiving the importance it needs to, and that has to happen at a higher level. Cannot happen at a practitioner or probably at an individual level, unless it spreads like our Swachh Bharat. It has to spread everywhere. Only then people will realize.
Okay, listening to both, this is really a huge public health issue. It's an unrecognized public health issue, isn't it? What do you say? The whole idea, people may not be able to do the kind of things that they should be doing and that you so rightly recommend. So what would do you have any advice for people who just don't have the time or luxury?
I think, Thomas, one of the things I'll say, even when I wrote the book, as I said that I had a child and I can't go away somewhere and I don't have the luxury of being in a treatment center for 4 weeks. And that's also why the book came about, that I wanted to bring the power back to our hands. Now, while the book talks about so many protocols and therapies. By no means do I expect people to do all of it. So one thing I will say is that I think we all owe it to ourselves to give ourselves 15 minutes a day of self-care. I'm sure the busiest of us can give 15 minutes. Be it 15 minutes of taking some warm oil and applying on our body before our bath is a powerful hack in all health. It calms down the nervous system, and if we are calm people, overall everything just goes better. So I think we need to look at it more from the perspective of 15 minutes a day. And the reason I also give protocols from science, nutrients, ancient wisdom is that there are people who will come and say that I don't believe in ancient wisdom, give me a supplement. So you can do that as well. For example, if you have a tendency to be more anxious, not able to calm down, a magnesium, which is the safest nutrient for practically everybody for good sleep and not allowing us to get anxious. However, if it's somebody who says, I don't believe in taking a supplement, which is something man-made and synthetic, then yeah, by all means, just take some oil and apply, but just give yourself, we owe it to ourselves. Can we not give ourselves 15 minutes a day to love ourselves?
That's an important question. Thank you. So, Uma, what would you tell a patient coming to you? I mean, Deepa has said, give yourself 15 minutes. Do you have an equivalent coming from the world of clinical medicine?
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of them land up with us when they have run into problems. So course correction is a rather long process. I know prevention is much more difficult than curing, but it is more black and white for us where somebody has already landed up with an issue. But definitely, yes, regardless of the sleep issue, we do enforce the importance of sleep hygiene in all patients coming to us. And in addition to giving them that prescription leaflet or a CPAP machine to use.
Can I stop you there? This is my ignorance. What do you mean by sleep hygiene?
So sleep hygiene is just an itemized list of telling you what you should do to fall asleep, something which our ancestors knew, something which we have blissfully forgotten. So things like winding down rituals, having an early dinner, trying to exercise early rather than late in the evening, start dimming your lights as the day progresses, avoid blue light exposure, do not drink tea or coffee at least 6 to 7 hours prior to bedtime, because though it may give you that initial burst of activity, it does affect the sleep rhythm. And though alcohol will make you sleepy, it disrupts sleep architecture. So the quantity is there, but the quality is bad. And also we talk sometimes about, in people who really can't fall asleep, certain remedial measures like having a bath with some Ayurvedic oils. Deepa talks about it in her book as well. Having some olfactory stimulation to help them sleep. And also things like a glass of milk, which increases tryptophan levels and helps them sleep. So basically the whole art of relearning how to fall naturally asleep is what constitutes sleep hygiene.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to throw it open to, you've been a wonderful audience, I'm sure. Okay, I think, yeah. Who's, I don't know whose hand, okay, I think your hand came first, and then, I think then, Rajni, the gentleman's that shirt, and then the gentleman this end with the pinkish shirt.
Hi. I feel like I've learned so much about Ayurveda, even though I've lived here for 15 years, just in that 20 minutes as you were talking. So I have two quick questions. One is, what is your take, for both of you, on like melatonin supplement? Okay, because that's the first one. And then I'll also ask the second one, then you can take your time to answer. Second thing is, I've heard about this mouth tape, and I just wanted to see what you think is the plus and minus of it.
Yeah, so I think melatonin, there are so many differing views. I know that a lot of sleep physicians do use melatonin. It's probably the most widely bought over-the-counter supplement today. However, my first step is never melatonin, and I've written an entire section in the book about this question, where the only time I've used melatonin is when somebody came to me. He had been put on medication for schizophrenia to help him sleep, and he was still not sleeping. So over 6 months, while weaning him off this strong medication, I used melatonin alongside to wean off. But otherwise, my absolute no-no is melatonin when it comes to sleep, and I prefer to start with safe nutrients like magnesium and doing a lot of the protocols, breath work, which I talk about in the book. So I just think melatonin, we've got the entire endocrine system is set up with negative feedback loops, which means if we give something from outside, then the body doesn't really release it. The first step to helping ourselves release melatonin should be by being in sync with light and dark cycles. So I do come across people who are not, they believe they're the night owls and they do sleep when it's bright outside and then they're awake when it's dark and they're taking melatonin, and that's just a no-no in my book. I don't know about others, but as I said, I've used it very effectively in weaning someone off much more strong medication. I hope that answered the melatonin. The second thing that you asked was about mouth taping. As I said, it's you see a lot of health experts today who are probably not even focused on sleep, talking about the wonders of mouth taping and how it's helping. And yes, there is a connection between people who have a tendency to breathe through the mouth, because mouth breathing decreases nitric oxide, which means it raises our heart rate, raises our breathing rate, it doesn't allow us to slow down. Therefore, they believe that when you tape the mouth, you allow yourself. But this can be really dangerous when somebody is watching it on Instagram and trying it for themselves. Maybe they have a lot of imbalance of kapha, tendency for sinus, and if they start doing this at night unsupervised before the body has been brought into a state of balance, it can be quite dangerous because you're cutting off all forms of breath. So I think it has to be really used with caution. However, as I mentioned, my client who had this tendency for mouth breathing, I started to train her to relearn how to breathe through her nose by doing a daytime mouth taping, making her lie on the floor in the afternoon where someone was also in the house taping her mouth and relearning how to breathe from the nose. And I had left clear instructions that she should never try this at night and she should be doing it when she's awake.
And what are the benefits of mouth taping?
It just, for somebody, think of somebody who's developed a default habit over 40, 50 years of breathing through their mouth. They've forgotten to breathe through their nose. So they need to actually teach themselves again to breathe through the nose. And this takes time. So if you're walking around and you tape your mouth, and it sets a reminder to your brain that start to learn to breathe through the nose. Now, we absolutely don't want to do this when we're not conscious. So if you're asleep and then, you don't want somebody gasping and waking up and cutting off oxygenation. So it has to be done when they're conscious in a way that, you tape the mouth and learn to breathe through the nose for the next 6 months. Eventually, you remove the tape, you'll be reminded of the tape and you'll start teaching yourself to breathe through the nose.
Uma, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I agree with Deepa that I almost never prescribe melatonin except for jet lag. And when I talk of jet lag, people should also be aware of a condition called social jet lag, where our 24/7 lifestyle is introducing jet lag equivalent or a rhythm disruption equivalent to traveling across time zones. But as she said, melatonin is available across the counter. So people do misuse, but I never prescribe melatonin unless it's absolutely necessary. And regarding the mouth tying, the mouth taping which you were talking about, As a medical practitioner, I would like to make sure there is no anatomical obstruction, that the bones are not bent, there is no polyp inside the nose. In case of children, sometimes tonsillar or adenoid enlargement can cause mouth breathing. So those things have to be absolutely ruled out before we try any of these, and it's absolutely draconian and dangerous to try it on your own.
Can I ask a question on this?
The gentleman, in the shirt, and then let me
Sure. So firstly, thank you Deepa and thank you Uma for this amazing session. It was really insightful. So my question is about a particular aspect of sleep, which is dreams. So if you could please explain briefly what is a dream, like biologically. Number two, what is the significance of a dream? And if there is any correlation between the kind, duration and the number of dreams one has and the quality of sleep. Thank you.
Uma, you go first. I can add to it.
She passed the difficult question.
No. Actually, I thought I would.
Yeah. So, dreams are something which have been studied a lot, but no one has been able to answer the question. We have a lot of postulations about why they happen, but scientifically speaking, you technically can dream throughout the night. You tend to remember dreams in a particular stage of sleep called the REM sleep. And many of REM dreams are vivid, which means the body in a paralyzed state is trying to simulate a real life situation to get you ready. And sometimes the day's events can come out as dreams. Of course, we do read in mythology and other folklore that there are significance to the type of dreams and stuff. I mean, I've been fascinated myself, but as a medical person, all that I can tell you is you dream throughout the night. It indicates that your brain is active. Many people dream in black and whites, many of us dream in color. We really don't remember most of the times unless it's been really vivid. And of course, when you have a sleep disorder, you tend to have more vivid dreaming because the sleep architecture shifts. The quantum of very deep sleep which you get reduces, so something else rebounds and you tend to remember your dreams. So this is all I can tell you as a medical professional.
I think I will build on that because what Uma said about how sleep disruption can influence dreams. In Ayurveda, that it is said that when somebody's gut and liver is in chaos, they'll have disturbed dreams. So when you have dreams which seem as if it's nonsensical world, it's a sign that the gut and the liver are off balance and you need to restore the balance. And we've actually experienced that. For me at least, even personally, I can tell you that when these chaotic dreams start coming, I need to do something strong to support my liver, and almost immediately I find that disappears. However, I will also add that the Ayurvedic texts do talk about Vata dreams, Pitta dreams, Kapha dreams, that people who are more Vata will keep dreaming like Vata. So they'll go from dream to dream to dream, like they're never stopping. Just as they are in life where they can't slow down, their mind is overactive even in dreams, and it's flitting from dream to dream, and they can also be extremely creative. Pitta dreams, it is said, can be very violent, very volatile, disturbed dreams, and Kaphas are usually the mellow people, and it's said that they'll have very pleasant dreams, like they're in the countryside and it feels very relaxing, or they just don't bother to remember their dreams. But the dreams is also a way where you ask questions about the dreaming patterns to somebody and you understand the Prakriti. And there was a woman who had come to me long ago. One of the first things she said to me was that I have so many dreams, I never stop dreaming. When I worked with her and brought her liver to balance, and she evacuated something like 300 gallstones, after that her dreams, that volatile dreams, completely stopped.
Thank you. Rajni, you're next, and after that, the gentleman, up there. Unfortunately, these are going to be the last two questions. Sorry, because it's almost 8.
Thank you so much for a very interesting discussion. So many different areas to explore. So I'll just focus on two. One thing that you mentioned, Uma, about the need for policy. I think we're sorely lacking in a policy which recognizes drowsiness as equal to drunkenness. And when I studied in the US, doctors, we went through this in our training systems. You spoke about it, about being a resident 48 to 72 hours without sleep. It also meant that we were operating at the same level of drunkenness as someone who's had way too many drinks and is driving. So driving while drowsy laws, what can we do about that in India? Because we really violate that. Second is, I'm always fascinated with adolescents and young adults and how they shift from the state of being a child to an adult, and then how their sleep cycle changes. Again, this is to do with policy. There are schools and universities abroad which are looking to change the timing of teaching and work schedules for adolescents and young adults, recognizing that they go to sleep later, wake up later, so that they don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. feeling groggy and going to school. So your thoughts about sleep with policy, one on drunken driving and driving while drowsy, and second on adolescents and school systems changing their rules to be more naturally according to circadian rhythms.
Yeah, only if wishes were horses, we could, yeah, I could talk about them, but yes, we have tried with our own research to tackle this issue. I was talking to Deepa before the session that we have looked at night bus drivers and looked at drowsiness among them. So a lot of them did admit to feeling drowsy, near-miss accidents and stuff, but the concerned organization was not even ready to reveal the results of the survey to the drivers, because that would mean a change in their policy, that would mean a change in the shift schedule. So it is a very deep-rooted problem, and I think many advocates like you, me, and all the people here have to rise up against it. And coming to adolescent sleep again, yeah, I do agree that there are academic pressures and school timings should be changed, but I think even among adolescents, gadget addiction, social life, the FOMO which I spoke about are also driving factors in poor sleep. I think it is easier for us to address that first and then tackle the big dragon of the school system.
Okay, so unfortunately we got one.
Two.
Okay, the lady sitting there, yeah.
Yeah, I just have two questions quickly. One, what is the impact of the kind of clothing we wear on sleep? Because we wear tight belts and tight bras, and I'm talking about women, and men also we wear like tight belts. And then two, what about the impact of marijuana over sleep? Because I've heard that people who take marijuana like sleep like logs, and I have seen it in my real life as well. So any opinion on that?
I think that's a very nice question. I can't talk about tight clothing. However, I do talk a lot about synthetic clothing and how it has been shown to impact liver function. It has been shown that women who have challenges such as endometriosis or fibroids, where the root is the estrogen dominance, is triggered by suboptimal liver function. And some of the ways that we disrupt our liver function is we have to know that our liver is the primary organ of detoxification, and therefore when we load our liver with exogenous toxins such as synthetic wear, and we're already exposed to a lot of pollution, plastics, then it's almost as if the liver can only do so much. So therefore it's busy cleaning up that mess, and therefore it can't clean up hormones. So it's very much linked to sleep disruption, how our hormones behave. And so be it synthetic clothing, be it hair coloring, all of that can be impactful on liver function. We have spoken a lot about marijuana in my Ayurvedic colleague community, and this has come up, but the belief amongst most Ayurvedic practitioners is that marijuana's benefit is immediate, that you feel the result right away, but long-term use of marijuana marijuana in a recreational form can eventually impact something called the nadis, which yoga and Ayurveda talk about, where how science says arteries and veins carry blood, yoga and Ayurveda say our nadis carry prana, that over time marijuana usage does contribute to the nadis becoming compromised and how prana flows, and therefore it can create imbalance in any area of the body. So the final takeaway from that is the belief that occasional random use is absolutely perhaps not a problem, but long-term use is eventually disruption.
Your thoughts?
Yeah.
Fluids and marijuana.
Yeah. Okay. So you said that in the same breath. So clothes, always wear comfortable clothing. Deepa told you the physiological effects. Other things also is that if you are wearing very tight clothing, you may not be able to ventilate well. I am talking from a medical point of view. You will not be able to send in enough air to your lungs if they are getting restricted with tight clothing. And also, it has to do with synthetic, she spoke about synthetic clothes, it's also about body temperature. Your clothes should be breathable fabric. Only then the body temperature will be at an optimal level for you to fall asleep. Regarding marijuana, I think it's a no-no. We might justify it with whatever, but just like I said about alcohol, there is the initial flash followed by a disrupted sleep architecture. And we see a lot of patients landing up in problems because of that.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I know there are lots of questions. We've
30 seconds. Sort of lost in the dark here. Can I have 30 seconds paper?
Sure.
Okay. One really quick question. Very quick question.
Yeah. So Deepa, in your book you mentioned deep hormone work is beyond the scope of this book. So just your opinion on the bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, including thyroids, T3.
Well, I think that's such a long topic. It's definitely not a 30-second answer. Yeah, for sure. I don't think the book can go into things like bioidentical hormone replacement therapy because it's so personalized, and I'd really say anybody seeking that can work with a practitioner. However, for me, it's not a complete yes or a complete no, but my no is when the first step is towards hormone replacement therapy, which is really at times not required. A lot of times you can optimize hormones just by improving gut health and doing a lot of the foundational work. Many women's hormones do balance, regulate, and if you're talking about post-menopausal bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, that in Ayurveda it's believed that we also have age of life. So Kapha age is when we are growing as kids, Pitta age is when we are fertile, we are having our cycles, and Vata age is when we are post-menopause, everything's becoming dry. My teacher, who's 75 years old, continues to tell me that we have great potential to absorb or rather produce hormones even post-menopause through transdermal use of herbs. So, for example, using Abhyanga oil with the right herbs to allow the body to keep synthesizing progesterone. So I think it's a vast topic. Maybe we should have an entire event on that.
On which note, please continue your questions in private. Once the formal session is over. And it's just my pleasure, really, my very pleasant task to thank both of you. Wonderful.